Imagine being chosen from among thousands of children, not to become a princess or heir to a throne, but to become a living goddess. Imagine crowds gathering beneath your window, waiting for a single glance from you, believing it has the power to change their destiny. This is not an ancient legend from a distant past. It is a reality happening today, right now, in the heart of Nepal. This is the Kumari, the living goddess, who still sits at the center of a unique tradition that fascinates the world as much as it sparks controversy. So how did this legend begin? Why does a modern society like Nepal still hold a child as sacred? And is it truly a blessing or a burden only the Kumari herself can understand? Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. With your support, we can continue bringing you more high-quality documentary content and remarkable stories that deserve to be told. Turn on notifications so you never miss a new video. The origins of the living goddess Kumari trace back to a legend deeply rooted in Nepal's history, where Hindu mythology, Buddhist traditions, and ancient royal politics merged to create one of the most fascinating religious customs in the world. This unique tradition centers around a young girl believed to be the living embodiment of the goddess Taleju, the powerful guardian deity of Nepal's royal family. While the Kumari tradition appears today as a sacred and ceremonial practice, its story began with a mysterious relationship between a goddess and a king, a bond shaped by protection, loyalty, fear, and divine power. According to legend, the goddess Taleju would appear before the ancient kings of Nepal in the form of a beautiful woman. She would visit the royal palace at night and hold secret meetings with the king. During these meetings, she shared wisdom and spiritual guidance, helping the king rule the kingdom wisely and protect the nation from unrest and chaos. Taleju represented purity, power, and divine intuition, and her presence was seen as proof that the king ruled under divine protection. Over time, this sacred connection became essential to the kingdom's stability, and the king relied heavily on her guidance before making major decisions. However, legend tells us that this sacred relationship came to a sudden end after a dramatic event remembered in Nepali folklore. The story is often linked to King Jaya Prakash Malla, one of the last rulers of the Malla dynasty in Kathmandu during the 18th century. According to the story, one night the king became consumed by pride or crossed a sacred boundary. Some versions say he tried to touch the goddess or acted disrespectfully toward her, violating the spiritual distance that should exist between humans and deities. Enraged by this act, Taleju disappeared instantly. With her disappearance came the loss of divine protection, and soon the kingdom began suffering from political instability, conflict, and unrest. The people believed that the goddess's absence was directly responsible for these troubles. They came to believe that the only way to restore balance and stability was to bring Taleju back in a new form, one that would preserve a sacred distance between the goddess and humanity. This is where the idea of the Kumari was born. The goddess would no longer appear as a grown woman. Instead, she would manifest in the form of a young girl untouched by the world, a pure child, free from worldly desires and human corruption. In this innocent form, Taleju could remain among the people while maintaining divine purity. Thus began the tradition of selecting the Kumari, a young girl believed to be the living vessel of Taleju. She would live in a special palace, rarely leave its walls, and would not touch the ground during public appearances. She would only appear during sacred ceremonies and important festivals, offering blessings and reassurance to the people. From that moment onward, the Kumari became closely tied to the political future of the kingdom. Kings would seek her blessing before ascending to the throne, believing her approval symbolized legitimacy and divine favor. Even today, long after Nepal officially abolished its monarchy in 2008, the Kumari tradition remains alive. During major festivals, the living goddess is still carried in ceremonial processions, and many continue to believe that a single glance from her can bring luck, protection, and blessings, as if Taleju never truly disappeared, but simply changed the way she reveals herself to the world. The process of selecting the Kumari is considered one of the most fascinating and mysterious stages of this unique Nepali tradition. The transformation from an ordinary child into a living goddess does not happen randomly. Instead, it follows strict criteria and complex rituals involving both Buddhist and Hindu communities, reflecting the deep spiritual and historical roots of this sacred practice. The journey usually begins by selecting a group of young girls between the ages of 3 and 7. This age is believed to represent the perfect balance of innocence and awareness. At this stage, a child is seen as pure and untouched by the complexities of the world, which is considered essential for the belief that the goddess Taleju can inhabit her body. One of the most striking aspects of the selection process is the examination of what are known as the 32 physical perfections. These are traditional criteria rooted in ancient Hindu symbolism and are believed to represent purity, balance, and divine perfection. The candidate is carefully examined to ensure she possesses specific physical qualities associated with sacred beauty and spiritual worthiness. These qualities include clear, flawless skin free from marks or blemishes, large expressive eyes with a calm and steady gaze, a soft and pleasant voice, dark hair, evenly aligned teeth, delicate facial features, a symmetrical body, and small, well-formed feet. These requirements are not viewed merely as standards of beauty, but as symbolic signs that the child's body is suitable to carry the sacred presence of the goddess. Beyond physical examination, candidates must also undergo psychological and spiritual tests, which are among the most important parts of the selection process. One of the most famous tests involves measuring the child's calmness in frightening situations. According to tradition, the girls may be placed in an intense ritual setting involving masked dances, frightening faces, loud sounds, and dramatic ceremonies designed to test their emotional stability. The belief behind this ritual is simple but powerful. A true goddess does not fear. Therefore, the child who remains calm and composed in such an overwhelming environment is believed to possess extraordinary spiritual strength and the inner stillness required to embody Taleju. Candidates are also observed for their discipline, patience, ability to focus, and respect for sacred rituals. This is especially important because the Kumari must adapt to a highly structured life filled with ceremonies, traditions, and partial isolation from ordinary childhood experiences. At the end of this long and demanding process, only one girl is chosen to become the living goddess. From that moment onward, she is treated with profound respect and reverence, under the belief that she carries the spirit of Taleju within her small human body. In this way, the selection process becomes more than a ritual. It becomes the gateway between an ordinary life and a sacred destiny. Once she is officially chosen and declared the living embodiment of the goddess Taleju, the child is moved into a world completely different from the life she once knew. The living goddess Kumari resides in a small palace known as the Kumari Gar, located in Durbar Square in the heart of Kathmandu. This historic building, decorated with intricate wooden carvings and beautifully crafted windows, is treated more like a sacred temple than a home. The moment a girl is selected to become the Kumari, she moves into this palace and begins a life unlike that of any ordinary child her age. The palace becomes her entire world, while the square outside serves as her limited connection to the outside world. One of the most defining aspects of the Kumari's life is the strict set of rules surrounding her daily existence. These rules symbolize her sacred status and purity. She is not allowed to let her feet touch the ground outside the palace, as it is believed that the earth, associated with death, sickness, and human suffering, is not worthy of the goddess's feet. As a result, whenever she appears in festivals or public ceremonies, she is always carried. Unlike ordinary children, The Kumari does not attend school in the traditional sense. Instead, she receives private education inside the palace from teachers who visit regularly. This system attempts to create a balance between preserving her divine role and meeting her human needs as a growing child. Her daily routine usually begins with simple rituals performed in her room. Women assigned to care for her handle her needs and maintain her daily routine. Meals are served at specific times, and her health is closely monitored, since even a small illness or injury may be interpreted as a sign that divine blessings are fading. She spends her time playing within the palace rooms and walking through its corridors, but her life remains highly restricted and surrounded by silence and reverence. She rarely meets children her own age and has very limited interaction with the outside world, except during major religious festivals. This limited connection with society makes the Kumari's life a unique mixture of isolation and worship. She is a child, yet at the same time a sacred figure treated with extraordinary respect. In this unusual existence, reality and mythology merge, and her childhood becomes part of an ancient tradition in which people see her as the living presence of a goddess who protects and blesses them. The appearance of the living goddess Kumari during major festivals is one of the most anticipated and extraordinary events in Nepal's cultural and spiritual life. It is the rare moment when this sacred figure leaves her isolation inside the palace and stands before the people face to face. Although the Kumari is revered as a goddess throughout the year, her presence during festivals elevates her status to something almost mythical. To many, she is not merely a religious symbol, but a spiritual center around which the entire city seems to move. This sacred presence becomes especially powerful during the Indra Jatra festival, held annually in Kathmandu. It is one of the largest and most important religious celebrations in Nepal, blending both Hindu and Buddhist traditions into a single grand event. During this festival, the appearance of the Kumari becomes the moment everyone waits for, as if they are about to witness a direct encounter with something divine. The festival begins with the raising of a sacred wooden pole known as Yasing, which symbolizes Indra, the god of rain. Soon after, grand processions begin moving through the ancient streets of the city. Though the festival itself is filled with breathtaking rituals and performances, the most awaited moment is undoubtedly the Kumari's appearance on her royal chariot. Her public appearance is prepared with extraordinary care. The Kumari is dressed in richly embroidered red garments, a color symbolizing power and divinity. Her eyes are outlined with dark kohl, and a symbolic third eye is painted on her forehead, representing wisdom, spiritual vision, and divine strength. She is then placed on a wooden throne inside a magnificent ceremonial chariot known as a ratha. This chariot is often pulled through the streets by dozens of men who consider participating in this act a great spiritual honor. Before she is placed on the chariot, the Kumari often appears briefly at the palace window. In that instant, silence spreads across the crowd. Then, as she becomes visible, thousands erupt into prayers, cheers, and chants, as though witnessing a heavenly manifestation. The chariot moves through the old streets of Kathmandu while massive crowds gather on both sides. Thousands raise their hands toward her, hoping to receive blessings. Many believe that a single glance from the Kumari can bring good fortune, success, and protection. Some even believe that a small smile from her can protect a family from disaster or bless an entire year of work and effort. Traditionally, merchants stood in front rows hoping her eyes would fall upon their goods, believing this would bring prosperity. Families brought their children close to the procession so they could receive the goddess's gaze, convinced it would grant health, protection, and long life. But the ritual is about more than simply seeing the Kumari. The procession itself represents the union of divine power and ordinary people. Traditional dances accompany the chariot, most notably the famous Lakhe dance, in which masked performers move through the streets, symbolizing the driving away of evil spirits. At the center of all this movement stands the Kumari, silent, still, and mysterious. Her calm presence amid the noise is interpreted as a sign of Taleju's blessing and approval. Yet any sign of discomfort, fatigue, or unease from her can cause concern among the public, often viewed as an unfavorable omen. Although the Kumari speaks little and rarely shows emotion, this silence is precisely what gives her immense power. She is a silent goddess who does not speak, yet every gesture carries meaning. Every movement is carefully observed and interpreted like a divine message. When the procession ends and the Kumari returns to her palace, the impact of her appearance remains deeply felt for months. To many, her presence is far more than ritual. It is a living blessing moving among the people. The journey of the Kumari begins to reach its end the moment she enters puberty. According to tradition, the goddess Taleju can no longer reside in the body of a girl undergoing natural physical and emotional changes. As soon as the first sign of maturity appears, whether it is menstruation, the loss of a baby tooth, or even a minor injury that causes bleeding, the child immediately loses her title as the living goddess. This transition happens without warning. Just as the Kumari is suddenly chosen and elevated to sacred status, she is also suddenly returned to ordinary human life. This makes the experience both extraordinary and deeply challenging. Once she leaves the palace, the former Kumari returns to her family home and must begin adapting to a world that often feels completely unfamiliar. She has spent years living in a highly controlled environment where she did not touch the ground, rarely interacted with other children, and lived far removed from normal daily life. Suddenly, she is expected to attend school, sit in crowded classrooms, write on paper, play outdoors, and interact freely with others. This rapid transition can create serious challenges in adjustment. Many former Kumaris struggle with social integration, especially because they may lack basic social experiences that most children naturally develop in early childhood. Some feel uncomfortable walking barefoot or even being directly exposed to the outside world. Others experience emotional difficulties caused by the dramatic shift between a life of sacred reverence and an ordinary human existence. Former Kumaris also face another challenge: society's perception of them. Many people continue to treat them with caution and deep respect, remembering that they were once worshipped as goddesses. This can make social relationships complicated, especially in the early years after leaving the palace. Over time, most girls gradually adjust to normal life, but the experience remains deeply embedded in their identity as an unforgettable part of childhood. Old myths surrounding marriage have also affected former Kumaris. For many years, a widespread belief claimed that any man who married a former Kumari would suffer terrible misfortune or die young. Although this superstition has weakened significantly in modern times, it once created serious difficulties for former Kumaris seeking marriage and stable relationships. In recent years, however, many former Kumaris have gone on to build normal relationships and families, showing that old fears no longer hold the same power they once did. This reality has drawn growing attention from human rights organizations and sparked global debate about the tradition. Critics have raised concerns about freedom, education, emotional well-being, and the rights of the child, arguing that the Kumari's welfare should be protected before all else. These concerns pushed the government of Nepal to introduce reforms. Today, Kumaris are allowed to receive formal education inside the palace, and some restrictions that once limited school examinations have been eased. Traditional selection practices have also been reviewed to reduce psychological harm to young candidates. Even so, the debate remains unresolved. Some view the Kumari tradition as a vital part of Nepal's cultural identity and believe it deserves respect and preservation. Others argue that while the tradition appears beautiful and sacred from the outside, it can be emotionally difficult from within. Between these perspectives, the Kumari continues to walk a fragile line between divinity and childhood. In a world moving rapidly toward modernity, the Kumari remains a powerful reminder of how deeply myth can survive through time. She is a child carrying centuries of belief in silence, living at the boundary between sacred divinity and human reality. In many ways, She reflects humanity's own contradiction, our longing for spiritual protection, and our equally powerful desire for freedom. If you enjoyed this video and found it worth watching, don't forget to support us by liking the video and subscribing to the channel. Your support is the true motivation that helps us continue creating more documentary content and bringing you fascinating stories filled with details and hidden secrets. Share your thoughts and suggestions in the comments. And don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss any new content.